sky's not blue.
You need to understand that when the time comes, I'm going to be taking over.
Welcome back to the Cult House Podcast. I'm your host, Roger Riddell. Joining me today is comic book writer and artist Tim Seeley. He is the co-creator of Hackslash, Money Shot, and Revival, and is also known for Grayson, Nightwing, G.I. Joe, New Exiles, and Batman Eternal, among others. How are you doing today, Tim?
Good. I'm a little sweaty. I turned the air conditioning off, so if you see like a single bead of sweat, that's why. It's too loud for podcasts, but I still cook a little bit.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that off and on every year when all these heat waves go through, because I used to live in Chicago and I'm about to move back up there in the next month or so. And a lot of places up there weren't designed with air conditioning in mind.
Well, fortunately, my house is old, right? These are all mine has the access because somebody bought it, but yeah, they weren't designed because it didn't exist, right? It's like my house is 101 years old. On my block is, older houses even. So out this far in the city, the stuff that like burned down because of the Chicago fire, that stuff got replaced sometimes by newer stuff. But out here, yeah, these are ancient ass houses. So fortunately, mine has access. We have a central air, but it does get hot in Chicago. I'm sure you've heard. Everybody always talks about the cold, but it gets pretty warm in August.
Yeah, so I guess the big news for you this week is the launch of the Hackslash Volume 2 Kickstarter. That backed that as soon as I saw that go live. But I've seen that it's already been successful, and you've already hit your first stretch goal, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we set this up not because we weren't already going to make this hardcover. We just basically do this because this allows us to do pre-order. It also allows us to, basically get paid fairly quick for it, as opposed to trades can take like years. So we offer like this exclusive cover, and then as people back it, we add stuff. Like then we buy pinups from artists and we add that to the book, and so it's just kind of a cool way to do it. It's not like we weren't going to make these anyway, but this is a way to get like a sort of direct to customer base going for an independent comic, which is it's very useful. I'm not. I don't want to do Kickstarter all the time for new stuff. I think it'd be hard, but for treating it as a pre-order for existing stuff, it's pretty effective.
Yeah, and I like the variety of bonuses that you all had too. I ended up backing the first volume, which I have here. I guess around late last year was when that launched, right?
Yeah, it took us about I think last April or so we did that, and we got that book out, and maybe it was somewhere around then. But it basically, that's the exclusive cover, so we can do two, which we wouldn't have been able to do for that. So just like a cool, beautiful object. As we want to make something, for everybody, make something nice. And I think, you're proof of it with your wall behind you that, like when you're stuck in the house because of a pandemic, and it's nice to have really quality, self-defining reads that you can have behind you, and like people see, oh, that guy likes this. Like now I know you're a big Marvel guy, right? So these are beautiful objects, and they're good reading material for being stuck in the house for probably what'll be another lockdown coming up here soon.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but it's starting to look a little bit questionable.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing about Hackslash for me is that back in 2011, I was at C2E2, and I was walking through Artist Alley with a friend of mine, Brian Warmoth, who I think used to work with you at Devil's Due.
Yeah.
And we stopped by your table, and he had suggested that I check the book out. At that time, I think sometimes I have to be in like the right mood to check things out. So it had been something that had been on my list of things to check out for years. And then I saw the Kickstarter last year, and I was like, okay, it's time to finally check this out, because I've liked some of your other work that I've seen. And I also became a big fan of Stefano Caselli when he was on Amazing Spider-Man a few years back. So just that combination of perfect things kind of coming together at once, I was just like, I need to check this out now. And I've really enjoyed it so far.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's weird. That stuff I wrote like 16, 17 years ago, some of those cases. So that it still sort of holds up, I think, and that, it's not super dated, and that there's something universal about it that works really well. So I really like that people, it doesn't matter to me when you come in and check it out. I've got people who bought that first book when we came out with it in 2004, and I've got people who, are just sort of checking it out now. I don't care. I just want you to read comics and enjoy. So that works well for me.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more of an edgier book, and it's kind of interesting nowadays the way that some people turn their noses up at that sort of story or subject matter. And it was something that came up in an interview that I did with Todd McFarlane a few years ago for the Monkeys Fighting Robots podcast, where we were talking about Spawn and how that's also a thing that some people, look at the spikes and the chains and stuff and they're like, oh, that's too edgy for today. But, he's like, it's a horror character. It's supposed to be edgy.
Right. Yeah. Which I mean, I'm not always a real big fan of like turning kid superheroes into edgy adult material, because that seems lazy to me sometimes. But, if something is designed for that, and Hackslash was, and it's meant to be, when we created it, part of my reaction to making Hackslash was being at conventions, and this is like 2003, and seeing like, goth girls and like punk kids, and, they were teenagers and they didn't have a lot sort of for them. And I kind of felt like, well, let's make a comic for those people. And it kind of worked out, I think, because that was the era of, people kind of coming into comics for manga and some other stuff. That was the sort of first era of it, I think. And a lot of those people transitioned to Hackslash. I think it worked really well.
Yeah, there's also kind of a nice crossover at those conventions too, with a lot of booths really focusing on horror fans as well.
Yeah, I mean, and in comics, I think the American traditional market, obviously superheroes has kind of dominated for a long time, but horror has always been a pretty viable genre in comics, going back to the 40s, right? I mean, there was pre-code horror and all that sort of stuff. So the long tradition of horror as a genre in comics, and it kind of disappeared for a little bit there, around the 90s and such. There wasn't a lot, but it's really kind of, with Steve Niles doing 30 Days a Night and Robert Kirkman doing Walking Dead, it really kind of reminded people this existed and cemented it as a genre.
Yeah, and you began Hackslash on Devil's Due and eventually transitioned over to having it published through Image. What was that process like? Because I know that part of that had to do with financial troubles on Devil's Due's end.
Yeah. I mean, the basic at the time, it was Devil's Due was a smaller publisher, and just realistically, like a big part of their business model was licensed comics. So at the time, when I first started doing that, we were doing G.I. Joe, we were doing Micronauts, we were doing stuff like that. But over time, then G.I. Joe got a big budget movie, and all this sort of raised the stakes of publishers fighting to get those licenses. Devil's Due at the time had lost G.I. Joe, which was a big financial hit. And so Devil's Due was having some financial problems. And basically at the time it was, we had done several issues of Hackslash, which there was debt that the publisher wasn't able to pay for those creators. Even though the book was profitable, the money had been kind of sucked up by everything else, and by trying to keep things afloat after G.I. Joe was lost. So, a big part of it was just trying to even out with those creators. And I had good relationships with Image, and I've known Robert Kirkman since we were kids at conventions back in the early 2000s, and Eric Stevenson and all those people at Image, and they were great. They let us come over and bring the book. We were able to pay off all the creators pretty quickly, and we just gave our entire library over to Image Comics, which has worked really, really good for us. I think we've been there now for 11 years at Image Comics.
And one of the other big ongoing creator-owned projects that you've had for the last year or so has been Money Shot. How did you all come up with that idea?
Money Shot was basically, we were watching a Vice News article, a news report about the difficulty of funding science. And my wife made a joke at some point about like, well, they should just do porn. And I was like, haha, funny. And I was like, wait, that's a great idea. And so I her sort of offhand comment to just be like, sort of take that little sort of idea that these explorers would go out into the world and have to fund that with this crowdfunding, and combine a little bit with like Captain Kirk's attitude towards sleeping with aliens in Star Trek, And then that's how we came up with Money Shot, as this sort of ongoing satire of what we expect from scientists, but how we don't pay them what they should make, and this idea of crowdfunding, and you know, this world we live in where everyone's a gig worker, and you know, everyone's got an OnlyFans page at this point. And so just kind of doing this big satire, but also, you know, filling it with heart, and having actual stories about real people.
Yeah, and kind of along those lines, I've always appreciated how a medium like comics or sci-fi can really kind of serve as a bridge from something that's seen as low culture to doing kind of high culture social commentary in that sort of way. Because, you know, you're looking at, you know, from a comedic perspective, at least the funding issues that science has. And then you brought up Captain Kirk, where, you know, back in that early run of Star Trek, his attitudes toward, you know, sleeping with aliens and things like that worked as social commentary for a lot of the attitudes of interracial relationships at the time.
Well, I mean, Star Trek was the first TV show to have an interracial kiss on it. So, you know, that Kirk made out with green ladies before a black woman maybe is a commentary on culture's readiness. But yeah, I mean, I think that's always been the way it is, and that's the you know, the genres of science fiction. That is what it is for, right? We're supposed to extrapolate the future now and tell us what will happen if we continue on these particular trends or these particular issues the way we do, and then to show us what could occur to that. And it can act as a warning, it can act as a sort of bellwether, it can hopefully kick us ahead of where we are. But yeah, I mean, you know, Star Trek was always shockingly inclusive, and you know, people always forget that, like, they live in essentially a socialist society where there is no money, capitalism is dead. Like, there's so much progressive politics in that show that, you know, I couldn't help but sort of be inspired by it, and kind of do our version of that in this sort of less than ideal future that Gene Roddenberry probably didn't want us to be in.
Yeah, and you co-write Money Shot with Sarah Beattie. What is that creative process like, as far as sort of working out different aspects of the stories, and just kind of the dynamics of the two different senses of humor coming at this too? Or do you all have roughly the same sense of humor?
Well, we definitely have the same sense of humor, but she says shit I would never say. That's the biggest difference. But our process is just that we talk on the phone about what the arc is going to be about. We kind of, you know, plan out the specific moments of character stuff we know we want to get to. I come up with the issue plots, essentially, break them down into panels, and kind of get some of the dialogue going. Then I pass it to Sarah, and she does what we call a joke draft, where she just throws in as many jokes as she can. And then I go back through and I cut the ones that are too offensive, or usually they're all funny, but the ones that are like, whoa, that was too dark, we have to get rid of that one. And then we just kind of hammer it into a shape, you know, and throwing ideas as we go along. And then, you know, then it's ready for the artist to turn into comic pages.
Yeah, and you all are also going to be co-writing Superman Lobo. I don't know how much you can actually say about that, whether it has to be cleared with, you know, DC's PR people. But what is the writing process on that like compared to Money Shot 2? Is it roughly the same?
Yeah, it's
or...
exactly the same. It's exactly the same. But we also, I think with the Superman stuff, you know, I can bring in the DC knowledge, like, you know, that I know the history of this stuff. So my job largely is like, okay, this is what, you know, we can use these characters and supply that nerd history. Whereas Sarah knows Lobo really well. She doesn't know Superman as well. So, you know, we kind of can combine our bases, and she, you know, as we started this, I think both Mirka and Sarah liked Lobo better. I like Superman better. And I think by the end, they're like, no, Superman is great. I'm sorry, I ever thought he wasn't great. So I hope that's what you get from the book as well, that, oh, Superman's awesome. That's part of our process, was convincing my co-creators how great Superman is.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a thing that took me a little bit longer to figure out, was how great Superman actually is, because I feel like as a kid you get this sort of overly sanitized version of him, but then as you get older you get presented with all of like the weird, like dark alternative versions of him. But I think there's like this place somewhere in the middle that has like the best kind of Superman stuff.
I mean, I've worked on the dark side of it, and I don't like any of that sort of stuff, really. Not,
Yeah.
I understand the value of it. I worked on Justice, and I had a good time with it. But I think the good Superman, the sanitized Superman, is the real guy. But I think the complexity of what he means changes as you get older. I think when you're like a teenager, you don't get anyone who's just good to be good, because you're a teenager, you start to distrust the system. And you can't believe that someone would be part of the system and not have, I mean, it's just biologically, you're a teenager. You can't really process that the man is trying to do something good, or that anyone would. But then you get older and you're not an edgelord teenager anymore, hopefully, though some people clearly don't get out of it. And then you come back to like, holy shit, Superman is an amazing character. I think he's perfect for kids, crap for teenagers, perfect for adults. But there's just like an era that you go through where you're a rebel. You got to fight. You can't, which is completely natural. And you just have to make sure that you let yourself grow out of it. Like, if you're in your 40s and you're hammering on the keyboard, complaining that Superman, shouldn't be a warrior for justice, or that it's too political, it's like, maybe you don't get it. That could be, maybe you should adjust your brain a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a character that was meant to be relatable so much as he's supposed to be aspirational, and I think that's something that you kind of mature into.
Exactly. Yeah. This idea that that superheroes can be both those things. And obviously the Marvel characters were meant to be heroes with feet of clay. They are you, right? Like, but that doesn't make Superman less value that Spider-Man exists, right? That just means they're different kinds of characters. You want to be Superman, you are Spider-Man, right? That's the, and Spider-Man always does the right thing in the end too. It's just that to get there, he has to go through the things that you would go through in life, that, can't pay your rent, and you can't, right? All this, that's what makes that character work. But yeah, I think it's an interesting sort of thing that we kind of lost about the idea of the superheroes, that it is supposed to be like this idea that there couldn't be a guy like Superman, he would totally take over, is just kind of a boring idea, right? Like, it's not new. We've all seen it a billion times. If it wasn't Superman, everybody's done their take on Superman, whether it's Supreme or, whatever, the boys character, the Homelander. We've seen it. So why would you do it with Superman, if you can tell a different story?
Yeah. I mean, I'm at the point where I don't know how many more dictator Supermans I really need to see in my life.
Right. Yeah. I think they did it to great effect in Injustice and in The Boys. But The Boys takes a really different stance on it too, because that character is really tragic, right? Like, again, how many times do you have to see it? That was a really good one. I think I'm good. I'm good to go. Awesome. Well done. Let's not dwell on that. I didn't need to see it in the Justice League movie.
Yeah.
It was okay. I'm done. I'm out.
And speaking of edgelords complaining on the internet, I know you're a big Masters of the Universe guy. What do you think about the response to the new Kevin Smith show?
Fabricated. I mean, it's there's this whole thing now where like you can be known or famous for just hating stuff, which is not a personality, right? Just like hating things is not interesting. It doesn't make you unique. It doesn't make you anything. But because algorithms are dictated by, this sort of reaction, this emotional reaction, anger is one of those things, and it happens to fuel an entire industry of people who really have nothing to say except to just complain about things. And so, they wait for these kind of things, right? So like, it doesn't matter what they did with this cartoon, those guys would have complained. That's what they do. And then a bunch of people who got scammed would give them money for some fundraiser or Kickstarter or GoFundMe or whatever, because they're like, these people express my anger. Oh gosh, they're my people. And they're like, no, they're just grifters. They don't give a shit about anything. It's just a sad ecosystem. But I think the bummer is how easy it is to pay attention to those people when there isn't that many of them, and they don't do anything valuable. So like, I don't know why we keep, if we just didn't acknowledge them, they would go away. So, like I did a commentary with the podcast Word Balloon on this new show just a couple nights ago. And, I'll answer questions about it, but I'm not going to give attention to just, I'm angry about this. Like a lot of these people, they didn't watch, and they've never watched He-Man, or they watched them when they were kids and they didn't watch the 2000 episodes, or they didn't read the comics. There's nothing new in particular. I mean, the new show is great, but there's nothing that hasn't been at least explored in some way before. Of course there is. There's 40 years of He-Man stories, right? It's like most of this has been done to some degree, and they didn't bitch about it then. So it's just fabricated. It's made up.
Yeah, I've kind of had the same feeling about a lot of the response to the Star Wars sequel trilogy, where it feels like it's a lot of people who, to some extent, go into these new sequels to things or new versions of things, expecting to feel the same as they did when they first saw a thing at like age 8.
Yeah.
But you can't put that genie back in the bottle, and it's never going to have you react the same way again. And they just find something to try to complain about and say that that's what made it different.
Yeah, and whenever I hear complaints about kids stuff, if you're a 4-year-old guy and you're like, "New She-Ra, I hate it," like, okay, well then how about you watch some films made for adults, like, or read a comic that is actually aimed at you. Like, maybe that's what you need to do. And I kept, a bunch of great films came out last week that I felt kind of went under the wire. There's a movie called Pig with Nicolas Cage, which is great. It's just like, well, just shut up and watch Pig. Like this, then shut up. Watch something, support art made for adults then. It just, that kind of just, again, but that won't get them the points they want. That won't get them the attention. That doesn't get them the clicks. And YouTube is a very bad platform because it does make all of its money off anger, pretty much.
Yeah. One other thing that I've always kind of wondered about, since you worked on Batman Eternal and that had, a big team of writers on it, what is it like to co-write something with a group that big? Because that, it seems like it could easily kind of go off the rails and not feel cohesive. But I feel like that did a really good job of kind of meshing really well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of we treated it like a TV writer's room, which, in a TV writer's room, you sort of have, on each episode, you have a lead, but everybody contributes. And someone in the end turns in the script, but everyone has worked on that story together. And that's just how we did it. We had 4 writers or 5, depending, and we usually, we would work together on what that story would be. And then someone would take that issue and do it. And then you pass it to everyone else and they make their notes. I actually thought it was great. I didn't think it was, I think we made some really cool stuff. No fights, no conflicts. We just had a great time doing it. I think, that's why we did a sequel to, we did Batman and Robin Eternal, using basically the same people, because I think we all got along really well. I still love those guys. I talked to James Tynan and Ray Fox and John Layman and Kyle Higgins. Like, I talk to those guys all the time. So I wish we could do more of that. I wish there was more comics done like that process, but it was really rough on artists because it's a weekly. And so having this rotating group of artists and trying to keep, that was the hardest thing. Obviously the artists still had a month to draw it, but if any of them fell behind, it was devastating, right? It would just kind of wipe out everything. So it's just really hard on artists, but really an awesome experiment that I would totally do again if we could make it work.
Yeah, I always felt like DC did a really good job of that with the Batman Eternal and Batman and Robin Eternal. And, on the same vein, Marvel had done a really good job of it with the Spider-Man Brain Trust in like the mid 2000s. And it always kind of made me think back to when I was a kid in the 90s. And you would have these crossover stories that went across a whole line of titles. And sometimes they would feel cohesive. And then other times you could tell that a different person had written each part of it, and it didn't feel like it meshed as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's tough because not everybody has the same exact voice, and which actually is sometimes kind of the fun part of it. I think reading, like, if I go back and read those now, even if I did it blind and I didn't see the credits, I would know who did what. I can tell, Scott's voice versus James' voice versus my own. So it makes for an interesting thing. Comics, monthly superhero comics are built that way, right? That you can change out the creatives and hopefully the overall coherence of it remains, but people like those voices. They want to see, Nick Spencer's version of Spider-Man. They want to see Gail Simone's version of Batgirl. So it's kind of this balance. It has to be cohesive and coherent, but it also has to be individualized.
Yeah, and speaking of Gail Simone, Since you wrote Nightwing before, do you have a stance on Dick Grayson's butt?
We absolutely, and maybe it's too much because we were having so much fun about it, but we really made that a plot point at Grayson. Like at one point, he's wearing a mask, but Midnighter recognizes him by his ass. Like we made it a plot point. Did we go a little far? Probably, but we were, when Tom and I were working on it, I think to some degree we were like just trying to outdo each other. So we were just having fun. Maybe we went a little bit too far in it, but I think that we should do. I personally believe we should exploit fictional characters sexually when we can for fun, and you don't have to do it too bad. But they're part of the joy of reading these things is like you can be kind of attracted to them. It can be titillating. I think that's fun. Again, like obviously you don't want to do it too much where you reduce the character to an object, and you don't want to do it in a kid's version of it. But a little bit of sexy, I think, in comics is I think warranted personally.
Yeah, and it's interesting now to see that there's a lot more of it across the gender lines as well, because it used to all just be female comic characters getting sexualized. So it's good that it's balanced now.
Yeah, that's the thing is you shouldn't. I look back at some of the stuff in the 90s. Like the problem is, it was all the same. It was all the same interest. It was all the same gaze, and GAAZE gaze. And that's a problem because it's reductive, and it also doesn't appeal to anyone but the people with that same viewpoint. Where I think is, we've gotten so much better. And I've always been a mutual opportunity exploiter, men and women. I don't care. I just think it's fun. It should be cheeky. It should be sexy. I'd rather have sex than violence personally. I'd rather have a positive in the world than a negative. So a little bit of some dude butt or lady butt or whatever every once in a while, or some boobs or some abs I think is great.
Yeah, and I've also heard that you do consulting on character design, and I was wondering what are some of the things that you advise people on the most, because one of my favorite things to see in the additional material in a lot of comic collections has always been sort of the design sheets for different characters. And there's one that I've always liked a lot from one of the Uncanny X-Men omnibuses, where it's got the notes for how to draw Nightcrawler, and there's one that points out to never draw the tail coming from the crotch because you'll give John Romita Sr. an aneurysm.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I do the consulting side of what I usually do is sort of like a weird combination of like, here's how to make a comic, which I do a lot for like companies who want to they want to put out a comic for instance, the one I did a while ago was like for a chocolate company, or for a production, they're going to make a movie and they want to pitch a comic first. So I tell them how to make it, and then when we do the sort of character design stuff, it's always about like, use these shapes of these characters to help tell the story, right? So like a more rounded character is soft, a lot more spiky shapes indicates like maybe more dangerous, harder. Like use the shapes and those things to tell the story, which is a lot sort of. It's easier when you're doing that character design than like that note for drawing Nightcrawler. When someone else reproduces it, these things can get lost, right? And if everybody does it in their style but doesn't keep those inherent things, it makes for a unique take, but it doesn't always communicate the thing that you started out with that thing to do. Obviously, they just didn't want to make it look like Nightcrawler had a dick hanging off. That was their thing. But it's just like maintaining those things over a bunch of designs or a bunch of different artists is hard. Whereas in animation, it's always the same design. So it's a little bit easier, I think, to maintain character qualities in animation than it is in comics because of the amount of people working on it.
And you recently opened an art gallery with your brother, right?
Yeah, the Seventh Corner, it's a pop-up gallery thing. As you may know, having a storefront right now is not well advised. So we've been doing it as a pop-up sort of thing. So we rent a space, we do a show, but we don't have a storefront right now because we don't know where COVID's going to be in, well, tomorrow really at this point, but definitely not in 2 months. So yeah, pop-up galleries basically is how we're doing it.
And the first one was in a Masonic temple?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. It's called the Irish American Heritage Center. I believe it's a former high school. And they turned it into like a museum of some sorts. It's an amazing space. If you live in Chicago, I absolutely recommend going there. It has a bar on the first floor. which is just incredible. And I believe it's the cheapest bar on the north side of Chicago. It's stunning because it's a nonprofit, basically. You can get like a beer for $4 or $5 there, which if you live here, you know, is not easy to do. You can get dinner for like $8, which is crazy. But yeah, we set up and did a gallery there. Our first one was called Intersections, and it featured a lot of local artists who are kind of fine artists, but influenced by pop culture and comics and stuff.
Yeah, I had talked to Corinne Halbert about the show, I guess maybe about a month or two ago now. And I've always been a really big fan of her work, and I've been meaning to check out a lot of the other artists as well.
Yeah, Corinne is awesome, and you know, lives not too far from me. And so when we were putting together the show, we really wanted, you know, people kind of from the neighborhood, but with a similar aesthetic. And it's weird how many artists in Chicago have that. That it must come from something in the air or something that played on TV when we were kids, or I don't know exactly what. But yeah, Corinne is a perfect sort of artist that we were looking for. Like, definitely influenced by pop culture, low culture, but doing this really interesting work based on that.
And I guess on a final note, I know that you're a big action figure guy, big 80s action figure guy. How do you feel about like looking at toys now, as far as like how the collector's market has kind of influenced that market and led to things being way more fancier than we were kids? I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Well, I mean, if you look at the action figure business now, I mean, there are really only sort of two sides of it. There are people our age who grew up on action figures, and that's like dudes and some women, obviously, but from ages like 30 to like 40, maybe 50 at the out end. And so there's these like collectors figures for them, and then there's ones for really little kids. So kids now stop playing with action figures at like 5 or 6. So you'll see like those big chunky action figures for the kids. It's like they're like this big, perfect for holding in their hand, cost like $13, maybe less, because it doesn't have a lot of detail. And so it's been completely just, you know, two sides of these things. It's really weird. And I, you know, when I go to, I have a 2-year-old, she has a lot of choices. They have the Imaginext figures, all these like cool little toys, but they're kids' toys. But at a certain point, there isn't anything. It's this or something that comes with 100 little interchangeable hands and like a stand and all this other stuff. They're essentially like totems or statues that you can like modify. That, and you know, so they're not toys really. They're not for playing with, obviously.
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting to see some of the I guess sort of vehicles and like backdrops and stuff that they make for the more collector end of figures too, because every now and then I'll see things like that and I'll be like, who's buying the TIE fighter for like the 6-inch TIE fighter pilot and having that on display in their home, because the thing's gigantic.
Yeah, I mean, for adult collectors, I mean, there's very you know, I guess my question will be is how much longer will that last? Because obviously everybody's going to, you know, what happened in the vinyl designer toy market, which you know, the Dunnies and the Moneys and all that kind of stuff, which are really cool things. The problem was that people who collected eventually ran out of shelf space, right? So like to some degree, that's going to be a problem. Is that people are just going to run out of places to put shit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I run into that problem right now with like all the Spider-Man stuff. So
exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't actively collect new stuff because of that. I just, you know, I like something that ends. If I'm gonna collect some action figures, like I do a lot of the 80s stuff. I do the Master Universe stuff. I like weird knockoff stuff, but like I don't actively really buy new stuff. But I've got to be able to have a place to put my art supplies and my child and my wife. So no new action figures for me. Every once in a while, I'll pick something up if it's so damn cool I can't stop myself. But you know, even like the stuff behind me, there's a few of newer stuff, but they're all Master Universe style or the weird Mexican knockoff figures that I like so much.
Yeah, and thanks again for taking the time to chat with me today. I feel like I've taken up probably about you know, a little bit over a half an hour of your time now, so I don't want to hold you up for too long. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to put out there for the viewers or listeners?
No, I mean, you just you want to follow me on Instagram. I'm Tim Seeley on there. On Twitter, I'm Hacking Tim Seeley. I try to post some art and some occasional just weird stuff I find in my old comics or toys, and then some opinions on occasion. So check it out. And thanks for talking about some stuff. I enjoyed chatting about the process and such. So it was fun.
Yeah, thanks again for taking the time.
Run you,